everyone, and welcome back to another video. My name is Jenna Van Mourik. I'm an author, writer, and reader of Christian fiction and Christian historical fiction. This is my second book. It's called Antioch's Daughter, and it came out earlier this year. It is the sequel and the second book in my Generations of Faith series. And today I thought it would be really fun to really quickly share with you, in honor of my sequel, some of my favorite sequels in fiction that I've read. As much as I love a good debut or a good standalone, there's something special about a sequel when it really just hits all the right notes and reminds you of the original. And specifically in this video, I'm talking about series where like the books kind of go together. There's a lot of series out like that can be read as standalones, but like I'm talking about specifically series that like have connectivity to them and like they're sort of cohesive and along the lines of one overarching story or theme. Alternatively, this video could probably just be titled A Love Letter to Connie Lynn Cassette, and it would also be accurate. Anyways, in any case, in no particular order, these are some of my favorite sequels that I've read, and a little bit about them and a little bit why. So this book is called Whirlwind by Dana McNeely, and I've mentioned it a few times on my channel more recently, but I didn't actually get to talk about it as much when it actually came out, which was last year. This is the sequel to Rain, and Rain was one of my favorite biblical fiction novels that I've read ever. It was just so like a whole other world, a whole other level of good writing and good fiction. It really was just so fresh and so beautiful and so full of wisdom, and that is definitely true of Whirlwind. I just wanted to pop this one in here because I didn't get a chance to talk about it as much when it came out, and it took me a while to get to reading it, but I enjoyed the continuation of the character of Miriam. Miriam was sort of like a side character, or she wasn't even really a side character, she was just kind of there in Rain, and in this book she ended up being like the main character and the main kind of person. One thing I will say about this book is that it is totally better if you go into it with absolutely no idea of what's coming next or of the back cover blurb. Just don't read this, because in my opinion, this gives away way too much of the plot. This is one of those like blurbs that I wish I hadn't read it, because it spells out so much of the plot, and I think your life would be better if you didn't read the blurb on this one. And if you liked Rain, just jump right into this one, but go into it with no expectations, because it will catch you by surprise more and you'll probably enjoy it more, versus when I read it, I had read the back cover blurb and I'd heard a lot about it already, and I found that as I was reading it, I just kept like waiting for something to happen that I didn't already know was going to happen from the blurb. But that's just my personal opinion, so do whatever you want. The next book I wanted to shout out on this list is Between the Wild Branches, which is the first of many Connie Lynn Cassette books that are going to be on this list. And this one is one of my favorites because it's part of a duology, so it's just a 2-book series. It's not like one book in a longer series. It's like the finale, the grand conclusion, if you will. And I loved this duology so much because it's 2 siblings and each of their stories. The first one's about the sister and the second one is about the brother. And it's just so good. It hits all the right notes, and I love that the main character is like a guy. Obviously in most books there's a guy character and a girl character, but I feel like this story is really driven by the guy's character arc and his thoughts and his emotions and what he's going through, and it picked up on so much of the like drama from book 1 that really built it up, and I just loved that. And I loved that it was just a 2-part story, and I think it did it really well, and this cover is gorgeous. I'm just gonna stay in a Connie Lynn Cassette theme here for the next couple of books. The next one I wanted to shout out is Until the Mountains Fall, which I believe, yes, is book number 3 in the Cities of Refuge series. Now here's the thing. I've always maintained that Connie Lynn Cassette is one of those authors that writes books that you can totally read out of order. You don't have to like necessarily read one and then the other. Of course, your experience is enriched if you read them in the order of publication, especially since all of her series kind of take place in the same universe. So different things, like there's Easter eggs and like clues and just things from other series that pop up again later, and I really love when authors do that. That's one of my favorite things. I've always maintained that her books can be read out of order though. They are, for the most part, they work very well as standalones, even though they're sold and marketed and packaged as a series. This book, however, though, this book, book 3 and book 4 in the Cities of Refuge series are definitely so much, like, astronomically better if you read them in order, especially because of this one. The main character of this series, like the one that the series starts out with and then like appears in all the other books, is really important, and something happens to her that is a plot twist, and in the first book, and it kind of changes and sets the tone and the course for the rest of the series. That was a plot twist. But then there's this funny little thing called an epilogue in this book, and that has a plot twist that like undoes the previous plot twist. The last 3 words of this book change everything you know about the series as a whole. Like, it just changes and completely redoes everything. So arguably book 4, since it's the finale, might be an even better sequel, because it's like going on with the continuation and bringing all 3 books previously to a close. But this one is my favorite of the sequels to A Light on the Hill, book 1 in the Cities of Refuge series, because of that plot twist and because of that ending line and that cliffhanger. It's just like, I remember reading it and just having to like scream, because it's one of those moments that you just can't recreate, and I highly recommend it. Please go read all of Connie Lynn Cassette's books. I beg of you. And finally, for the last Connie Lynn Cassette book on this list of Connie Lynn Cassette roundups, and I feel like she's just on this list a lot because she writes series, so of course I'm gonna love all of her sequels, but that would be Shadow of the Storm, which is book 2 in the Out from Egypt series. I loved book 1 and I loved book 3, but book 2 is something special. Book 1 and book 2 kind of focus around the same few characters. Book 3 introduces a lot of new characters, because book 3 is also kind of a launching point for her next series, which was the Cities of Refuge series, because it's all connected. Because book 1 and book 2 follow the same members of the same family, they appear in Wings of the Wind, but it's more of like a cameo appearance, versus in this one they're like the main characters. I just loved seeing more of the family that I already fell in love with. And I love families. I love families. I love chosen families. I love found families. I love families. If there's family in a book, if there's a family in it, you will find my nose in it. Next up on this list, we have Heavenly Lights by Barbara M. Britton. This would be book 2, I believe, in the Daughters of Zelophehad series, which is a 3-book series, if I'm looking at it correctly on my shelf. And I could have picked book 3 for this one, but I really just wanted to pick book 2 because these characters are my favorite. It's one of my favorite love stories that I've ever read. There's just something so sweet about it, and so like just tender and soft and beautiful and calming. And to me, Barbara's books are like very good cozy books. They're good to just like read on a quiet, peaceful night with a cup of decaffeinated coffee, or if you're like me and the coffee doesn't really affect you, just a cup of coffee. Once again, since this book is about the Daughters of Zelophehad series, each book follows like one of the sisters or 1 or 2 of the sisters in that family. So it's got that strong family dynamic, but it's also just got that very like sweet slice of life feeling that I love in historical fiction, just what life would have been like. And it has a main character who also has a disability, and that's something that I really loved to see portrayed, and I thought it was done so beautiful. And their love story that they had for each other and the love that they grew together was just, I can't speak enough praise about it. Plus, I loved the main characters from Lioness, and I loved that couple, so seeing more of them continuing on throughout the series just made me really happy. And of the Daughters of Zelophehad series, this book is my favorite. And then finally on this list, we have Keepers of the Covenant, which is book 3. That was a lie. It is book 2 in the Restoration Chronicles. I was looking at book 3 on my shelf. Lynn Austen's books are dense, which, I mean, clearly, but they're worth it because they're just like, you really are there with the characters for like an entire lifetime. You go through their whole lives with them, and that's something that definitely I have to be in the mood for, but when I am in the mood for it, oh, I love it. It's absolute perfection. She does life stories like no one else. I've read her biblical fiction, I've read some of her historical fiction. All of it is just so well done, so intricate, and just beautiful. I can't really use any other word other than beautiful. Like, it reminds me of like when you look at your own life and you look back at your own life and you're seeing everything in hindsight, how every detail was planned by God and all comes together. That's kind of the same feeling I get from reading a Lynn Austen book, because the plots are so in depth and the characters, you're with them for so long. It's the details that really make the storytelling so compelling and so intricate. I love the entire Restoration Chronicles. They have some of my favorite book quotes ever in them. This one sticks out to me because I just love the cover, but also I bought this series because of this book cover, because it was so like intriguing to me. And then I went and of course I read them in order because I'm a good reader. It was just wonderful. And this story also is mostly, the series is about I believe like Old Testament, rebuilding Jerusalem and that kind of thing after captivity. It's just really beautiful, and I liked On This Foundation too, but this one and Return to Me, which is the first book, were my favorites in the series. The third book was a good finale, but the first two stick out in my mind more. Those are a few of my favorite sequels. Have you read any of these books? Did you disagree with any of my rankings? Would you have picked one of the other sequels in the series, especially for Connie Lynn's books? That was so hard to choose. What are your favorite sequels? What books or series would you recommend? Let me know down in the comments. I would love to know. My name is Jenna Van Mourik. I wrote this book and another, and you can find more information about that on this card up here, as well as in the description box below. There will be links to my social media and my website, my books, everything where you can find all of that. So that's just one click away beneath this video. Thank you again so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!